So these will be the dimensional differences between flat plate and rotary press stamps. Now these are two different styles of printing, and the flat plate a little bit smaller than the rotary press stamps. Now we're talking about the dimensions of the design itself, so the actual borders on the stamp. So flat plate 18.5 to 19 wide, 22 tall, somewhere in that range. Rotary press 19.5 to 20 wide by 22.5 to 23 tall. Okay, I have two completely different stamps here. This is number 631 and this is number 498. So these two I ended up just pulling out of my album to show you guys. Now I want to say before we measure this that with these measurements, according to that Lynn article I got these from, which I have been referencing these measurements for years, these are still general measurements. It's likely, and I can attest to this, that sometimes I'll find a flat plate that is 22.5 millimeters tall. And how do I know that? Because the width measurements will pan out to be a flat plate, but it'll be a little bit like 22.25 or 22.5 millimeters tall, but it won't make it to 23, never, for a flat plate in my experience. Now, I'm not an expert, but I just want to mention that sometimes I find the height measurement to exceed 22 millimeters. So these are, again, general measurements, but this takes me back to, I want to mention Mallard Stamps did a flat plate versus rotary press video that's actually done quite well for him, and he mentioned in that video that he almost always skips the height or how tall it is and just goes directly to measuring the width. Nothing wrong with that. I actually totally agree with him, frankly. It just kind of narrows it down. So anyways, let's take a look at this first. This should be a flat plate printed stamp. That's at least how I had it in my album, so I hope I'm right. So we're going to line up our gauge here, and let me get you as close as possible without being blurry. Okay, cool. So we're going again from the borders of the design. Okay, so the green square, and we'll be taking this width measurement first, just so I can make sure I'm not wasting my time here. Just bear with me. Let's get this straight and slap this guy on there. And we're going to line up the grid as perfectly as we can. And we're going to take a look at just how tall. Now, I don't know how well you guys can see that, but that guy is pretty much 19 millimeters wide, since the stamp is rotated. So if it were a rotary press, it would be 19.5 to 20, and I can tell you from looking at this, I'm pretty sure I'm on there well, that does not look 19.5 or 20, not even anywhere close to 20, and so I'm convinced that that is a flat plate. Now, just to see what the vertical measurement would be, let's put this guy on here and take a look at what the vertical would be. Get it lined up. Go up a little. Okay. That looks like 22.5 to me. It's actually like spot on 22.5. Definitely not 23. See, that's exactly what I was talking about. These tend to be a little taller than the 22 millimeter measurement that I have on this little paper here. Like I said, I'm referencing Lynn's with this, but That happens a lot. Generally, they're not actually exactly 22 millimeters tall for a flat plate. I'm sure it varies from issue to issue, but I think that's why I 100% agree with Mallard stamps. I think it's just going to save you time and effort and, you know, skepticism about what your stamp is, to just do the horizontal, the width measurement. So anyways, so this is a flat plate. Let's check out this Harding stamp here, and let's just skip right to the horizontal measurement. Let's see what this one comes out to. And this one should be, what are we saying, 19.5 to 20 wide. I'm going to take my time and make sure I get lined up right. Okay, so that looks like 19.5. So we've got 19.5 width. Okay, so that already should be an indicator that this is a rotary press, but let's take the height measurement as well just to see. Okay, that's looking like 23. That one actually reaches all the way up to 23. So based on the two measurements here, I'm convinced that that is a rotary press, and because of the width measurement on this one, I'm going with flat plate. So anyways, just a quick short video. I had a subscriber request that I do this video, and I could have a long time ago, but the truth is I didn't bother because Mallard's video pretty much tells you everything you need to know. But I figured, why not? I'd show you guys an example. So just to talk for a minute while I put these back. Flat plate printing. That is when you have a big square soft plate of metal, well, a plate of soft metal, right? And it presses directly down onto paper and imprints the design by simply pressing the flat plate down. Rotary press is a big cylinder, and basically when you roll the cylinder, it prints the design on the stamp, and it stretches the design because of that style of printing, where it rolls over and prints it on like that instead of just going flat straight down. The cylindrical printing of rotary press tends to leave a little bit larger, kind of stretched design, and so that's the difference here is what we're looking at. You know, this one was pressed flat down with a plate. This one was rolled on a cylinder and printed with a rotary press style printing method. So that makes the difference, you know. This is very itty bitty touchy stuff to try and identify. You know, some people will struggle when they're brand new stamp collectors, and I absolutely get that. It was a pain in the butt for me, so I can appreciate you know, what you're going through if you're struggling with this stuff. And you can use whatever perf gauge you want. I end up using that Precision US Specialty Multi-Gauge because I love that grid. That grid is my absolute favorite tool to measure millimeters. You could use a ruler, you could use a perf gauge, any style perf gauge you want. They almost always will have millimeter measurements on there, and so use whatever works best for you. Ultimately, I'm going to tell you, you just got to figure out what you like and use it. And so for me, it ended up being that Precision multi-gauge. That's not the cheapest perf gauge. That is probably a $15 or $20 gauge, but to date, personally, I have yet to find anything that works as easily as this grid for measurements. And I do want to mention the main thing for me is that they know on this grid where most stamps will fall, and you can tell that it's kind of a little bit darker in these areas here. And they have the individual millimeter numbers in between 15 to 20, 20 to 25, up to 30. So once you line the grid up, you can really get a good look and just reference the line and say, oh, that's 21. So I just love this tool, and I highly recommend it. It doesn't matter if you're not doing US stamps and you're trying to measure other countries' issues. The millimeter is a millimeter, so the measurement will stand true. Also, I feel like it's totally worth mentioning that this is an old-fashioned, very classic way to check these. You can get one of these, like they say, Washington Franklin stamps, and they're easily identifiable with the 1 cent is spelled out, so you know it's a flat plate. Then you can cut the little corners off, and you can just use that to lay on top of stamps to make sure if the frame lines line up or not, and boom, that's one easy way to tell if you have a flat or a rotary press. Now, they were also going to mention that flat plate tends to leave spots of color on the back. I actually didn't know that until I looked this up here. But I thought that was a neat little tip too, so I felt like that was worth mentioning as well. If you see a bunch of color spots on the back, then that's one way that you can kind of at least have a good idea. It's probably flat plate as well, but I'm sure it's worth taking the measurements no matter what, just to be sure. So anyways, I hope this was helpful to somebody, and yeah, if you guys have any input, feel free to let me know. I wish that it was absolutely rock solid that they were always going, they will always fall within these measurements, but I have to say, in my experience, they don't. And just like we saw, that one that we just checked out was 22.5 tall, but it really was a flat plate. So yeah, kudos to Mallard for that tip of honestly just skipping to the width measurement. I think that that is extremely useful information, and I wish you guys all the best of luck in your hunt and your efforts to identify these different stamps. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great one. Bye-bye.